and I am running for Osseo School Board. And I called this meeting as part of my series of community conversations in order to more deeply explore the issue of technology and equity as it relates to the district and more broadly, as a society. And I know that the district feels like they've done a really good job getting out computers, and in the short time frame that they had, I think that they really achieved a lot. However, I'm always looking for gaps in regards to equity. And the premise of this is it's not just as easy as handing out a laptop or an iPad to every kid, that there are other barriers in terms of technology, equipment, access to services, social components about how the kids manage their social lives, like their Zoom backgrounds and things. And then also, do they have time to be on Zoom, as well as like, I think, of all of us, most of us here are trying to work with kids through distance learning, is that the process isn't easy, even if you are semi-computer literate, which I would probably put myself in that category. And it's we're all learning here, not just students, but all of us, how to adapt ourselves digitally during the time of COVID. So with that, why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? Why don't we start with let's start with Kevin Anderson. We'll just do brief introductions and then we'll start doing more discussions.
Very good. My name's Kevin Anderson. I'm running for Hennepin County Commissioner in District 7. I'm also a parent of 4 kids, 3 of whom are currently enrolled in Osseo area schools. My job, I've worked in information technology for the last 20 years, and most recently, my job has been solution architect, designing and making sure that businesses and organizations are able to manage their data like in all of its complexities and implement new solutions. So thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you. Cici.
Hi, my name is Cici Goya. I am a candidate for Brooklyn Center City Council. I am also a parent of District 279. I have a daughter that still goes to the district. My daytime job is I'm a math teacher at Brooklyn Center High School.
Thank you. Hollis?
Yeah, so Hollis Winston, maybe some of you know me. I ran for mayor of Brooklyn Park. My current job, well, most of my career I was corporate operations guy. Last few years I actually started my own business called Guaranteed America, where we work to connect minority business with more opportunities. Specifically, I'm working with a coalition of BIPOC-facing CDFIs and business support organizations. And so we're advocating for those businesses as much as possible during COVID-19, and also with some of the damage that occurred, after the killing of George Floyd. So just here to learn and give whatever input I can.
Thank you. Winfred, are you ready to join us? Let's see, he's still muted. Winfred? All right, well, he's still,
okay.
Oh, there you are.
Okay, do you guys hear me?
Yeah, so we're just introducing ourselves and then we'll start a little bit more of a conversation.
Okay, hi, everyone, and I well, multiple hats, running here, running there, I completely forgot. So thanks, Cici, for giving me a call and reminding me to jump on. My name is Winfred Russell. I'm a Brooklyn Park City Council member representing the West District. Prior to that, I taught for 6+ years at the University of Minnesota and worked at the Normandale Community College, as well as North Hennepin Community College, and the Independent School District 287. So I have experience working at the K-12 system, the community college system and the tier 1 research university system. So I bring a lot of those experiences to this composition, and I'm pretty excited to be a part of it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you were able to join us. Let's see, who would like to go next? Nancy? Oh, mute.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Nancy Meyerhoff. I'm the chair of Senate District 34, DFL, Maple Grove, Rogers, Osseo, Dayton. I'm a retired teacher, so I have not had the experience of distance learning. My students did have Chromebooks, and we integrated a lot of that into the curriculum when I was teaching 4th grade. And so I have the perspective of teacher as well.
Thank you, Nancy. Abdi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, Tamara.
Hi.
How are you? Good. My name is Abdi, and I thought I was just listening in, but I'll be more than happy to introduce myself. I'm Abdi Sabri. I'm Mankato Area Public Schools board member. This is my 5th year. I'm also on the board of teacher licensing called Belsby State Teacher Licensing Board. And my full-time job is the academic advisor at South Central Community College in North Mankato. So just wanted to listen in to your conversation that applies to the larger state as well as rural communities where I live. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Vogel.
Hi, I'm Mike Vogel. I'm in Tamara Grady's kitchen cabinet for the campaign. I'm a parent in Brooklyn Park, and I've got 3 kids enrolled in Osseo area schools. And I'm a compliance attorney, which essentially makes me a hired nerd for summarizing, taking a look at banking and finance laws. Before that, I was doing document review, and before that, I was doing Social Security disability advocacy. And I'm here to listen.
Thanks, Mike. Adua.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Odua. I live in Brooklyn Park here, candidate for Brooklyn Park City Council in the East. My background is in mental health. I've been in mental health for over 15 years. This topic just excites me because I think I have some questions. As a parent that have kids in Osseo schools and some other things that I'm hearing in this community in the course of this campaign. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you, Adua. Kirsten, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kirsten Flood, and I am a parent in the district. My daughter will be attending high school next year for the first time as a freshman. A little nervous. And I teach in the district as well. So I'm here to listen and learn.
Great. Thank you so much for joining. Caleb, did we go to you yet?
My name is Caleb. I'm a fellow student with Tamara at Maple, and I did a year-long fellowship focused on education policy back in 2018, and I've always kept an interest in it since, so I'm excited to hear how this conversation goes.
Thank you, Caleb. Luke?
Hi, everyone. I'm Luke Varian. I'm Tamara's campaign director. I'm also a student at the Masters of Advocacy and Political Leadership with Tamara and Caleb, and I'm starting a new position as a fellowship or a fellower with Lead Minnesota to help engage two-year students in the political process. So I'm excited just to hear what hybrid learning is going to be like, because we're going to have to do it soon too, and I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, same here. Thanks, Luke. Katrina.
My name is Katrina Yetzi. I'm a PhD candidate in anthropology at the University of Minnesota, and I'm also I am also in collaboration with 2 District 279 teachers, part of a project that has recently become a nonprofit in which we connect college researchers, primarily graduate students, with K-12 students. So I'm highly interested in this. I'm also a District 279 parent.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, Deb.
Hi, I'm Deb Peterson. I am Kevin Anderson's campaign manager. I have a daughter who will be a senior at Maple Grove Middle School, and then I have an older daughter who is a teacher of history and anthropology back in Colorado. 17-year military spouse, and we decided to retire here in Minnesota and loving it. And thank you for the invite, Tamara, here to listen and learn.
Well, thank you so much. So we get the conversation going. All the technology preparedness in the world doesn't matter if the kids don't have access. Somebody want to start at that point?
Well, I would be happy to start out.
Great.
I mean, unless somebody else, Winfred, any other voices here but I can say that from a technology perspective, making sure that we have access is definitely the first part when you want to start working with technology. And so from my perspective, figuring out how people have access to the technology, and that the technology is designed and incorporated in a way that supports students and families, needs to be one of the first priorities. So that's, absolutely right. If you don't have access to it, there's no sense in in anything after that.
Right. So in addition to handing out the access to equipment, it seems like we still have some access problems in our communities where people don't have access to Wi-Fi because it's expensive, and even for those of us who pay for it, it leaves a lot to be desired. Holly, so you wanted to go next? Thanks.
Yes, I think I wanted to speak to that exact point. So for children that have access to internet, I think distance learning is an option, even though we're seeing kids struggle even with that format. Some kids really just need to be in front of somebody, and I saw even some of that with my own family, because my kids have different learning styles. But I also think when you talk about Huntington Place, and I think the Willows, they don't have regular access to the internet, right? So if you give the computers out, and then you're saying you got to log in to do this, and then you're in a COVID-19 environment where you can't just go to the library, you can't just go to Starbucks or whatever, right? That makes it extremely difficult. And then I believe you will see some of these issues come down the road 5 to 10 years when these kids, when you take a look at these kids' report cards or other issues they may have. So I think that's a big issue. And I know that I had talked to you about this yesterday, tomorrow, but I wanted to say that, I have a nonprofit, and for the Willows and for Huntington Place, I think it was about $20,000 that they needed to raise. And I think the one person in the city council who supported it is Winfred Russell, who's on the call right now. And so we're going to pledge at least $500 to raise that $20,000, and we're going to have a fundraiser to do that. And so anyone who's interested in doing that, please let me know. And I don't want to take too much time on this because this call is not about that. But my other thing is that while we're going to do that, and I believe we have the resources to come together as a community to do that, we should not have to do that. That should be something that city council and the school board are willing to, if they have issues with funding, it's only $20,000, they should be willing to come together and do that, or they should be willing to coordinate this the same way we're going to coordinate this. So, I don't want to talk too much because it's kids and I get kind of passionate about the kids, but we shouldn't even have to go down this route for something this critical to a child's education.
Thank you so much for getting that process started. I mean, that's part of the connections that we want to talk about. How do we make these happen? Because it's how do we make these things happen? Because we have to have partnerships. The school district is certainly responsible to a large degree, but this is not just a schooling issue, it's a community issue. And thank you for starting the fundraiser. I would like to also pledge $100 towards that. And I believe that CZ wants to speak next.
Yes, 1 second, let me turn my video on. Let me, Winston, I'm gonna give you $100 towards that. Because as a teacher, I saw that, and as a parent, I also saw what access to technology looks like. And by the way, Huntington Place and the Willows don't just cater to District 279 students. I have a lot of my own Brooklyn Center school district students in those places, and I know how hard it was to get them access to come online. And one of the things that happen in those apartment complexes is that they sign contracts with specific carriers. So, for example, in Huntington Place, you can only have Xfinity, right? And so if you have an issue with Xfinity before, if you have a credit issue with them, but you can get like a different network, they won't allow that unless you have just a hotspot. And we know hotspots are very limited and they're very expensive. So to that, Winston, I appreciate you for that as a teacher. Really, that means a lot to me, so I'll give you $100 towards that. The other piece is just giving parents and students technology. It's not enough. I found that out even in my own district, that just because we think our kids are so savvy, they're savvy with cell phones, which is different than dealing with laptops. A lot of my students struggled with dealing with laptops. And a lot of the parents also struggled. So even when we had access, when we had homes that had the Wi-Fi or the internet connectivity and the computer given, it was still a process because for a very long time, schools have not deliberately included families in the learning process. And so now to just flip the switch and say, now go and teach, and by the way, here are the tools, it was really difficult. So I'm interested in finding out, in learning how, because we know this is gonna be our new normal, how might school district, especially the 279, do a little differently to be able to build that partnership between home and school where we have access.
Thank you, CZ, for adding that and your generous donation. Winfred, are you able to hear us? And do you want to speak next?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, sure. For sure, we have a serious issue with connectivity in the city. And I was quite surprised, frankly, that my fellow council members did not support that initiative. That would have at least helped to alleviate some of the internet connectivity issues that we have in the city. There are a lot of disparities and inequalities within our city. You all are pretty familiar, I'm sure, with a number of the issues that we have. And internet access is one of them. And I was hoping that we would have been able to help close the gap by supporting that initiative, but that was not the case. But that's not all. And so I'm looking forward to supporting and partnering with other initiatives, other groups to ensure that we can give some access to our young folks school age in Brooklyn Park. And as I said earlier, a number of those students, they're not just students from Marshall School District. There were students from throughout. The Brooklyn Park is served by 3 school districts. So we have students from 3 major school districts who all live in Brooklyn Park. And so for me, it's about equity. It's about how we work with our marginalized groups to ensure that we can close some of these gaps that we have. So let me know, and I'd like to partner with you, Tamara, and Hollis, and others who would like to see us, achieve that, and so we can push through some policies on the council that will try to address some of these systemic inequalities that we have as far as educational access and internet connectivity are concerned.
Thank you. Kevin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that often gets missed, and this was brought up, we're sitting in the hub of the most populous and wealthiest county in Minnesota. And the fact that there are people that don't have access to reliable internet in this day and age is really, it peels back the inequities that we have in our society, and the fact that we all rely on being connected to succeed in work, in school, and if we are not providing this at a level that is equal and equitable to all of our citizens, we're gonna keep running into these problems. And if we, it's great that we can address maybe two apartment buildings, but there's houses that don't have it. And credit can be a big factor in being a barrier to having access to reliable internet. And so I think this is something that should be addressed at probably the statewide, but until they get their act together, I would like to see something done at the county level where we can say Hennepin County is going to be connected, and work to make sure that all, everybody can be connected to reliable internet. Because it's a business issue, it's an equity issue. It touches so many aspects of people's lives. And if we're not ready to make some investments to make sure that we are prepared for what is going to be the necessity of our future, we're just going to be fighting these same fights in 2 years and 10 years and beyond. So I think it's important to have that. And then we also have to make sure, and this was definitely brought up, people's familiarity with using the technology. If they don't have access to it, there's going to be a bigger barrier to integrating that technology into your life and into your learning. And so we need to be able to account for that as we're, as the school district's planning on making changes and rolling out different ways of incorporating distance learning. So.
Great, those are really good points talking about funding models. Tara wants to speak next. So Tara, welcome.
Sorry. So one of the things when you were talking about credit things is it didn't even have, I'm a teacher in ASIO 279, and I had 2 students who couldn't get connected because the previous tenants had credit issues with Xfinity. So one of them lives in the Willows, and her family moved the weekend that the governor announced that we wouldn't be coming back to school on Monday. And we called to try and get them set up with the 60-day program or whatever they had initially through Xfinity. And they said that until the previous tenant bill got paid off, they couldn't get hooked up. And a lot of people called and talked with them. So it seems like there must have been no way around it. And then I had another student who also moved that same weekend from a homeless shelter into a house in Minneapolis. And the previous tenant there apparently still had a contract with Xfinity. Therefore, they didn't qualify for the free 60-day thing because there was a contract at that address. nor could they get service set up through, I can't remember, there was another program, because there was still technically service at the address, even though since they weren't the customer, there was no way to access that service at the address. So there were a lot of really, like, families that had never had internet. I had 5 families in my class who didn't have internet at the time it started. And 3 of them, the only way it was resolved was when the district finally was able to roll out hotspots. And we still don't know how, like, at some point, Xfinity must let someone who has a new lease sign up, but like none of us ever understood how to make that happen.
Thanks, Tara. That's a really good point. So it's not just as easy as handing a kid's laptop or even saying that Xfinity, the big provider, is going to offer services when they continue to have these bureaucratic barriers in front of it. Deb?
To raise a concern about the survey that went out from ISD 279 yesterday regarding people's reactions to online learning and how their families coped with it and everything. It was really easy for me to answer it because I have access to a computer and internet. And so those, to me, those responses are going to be skewed. Because there are parents who do not have that and are not answering that survey. So does, I don't know if there's a question here, but does anybody know how the district is going to be taking that into consideration?
That's a really good question. And to add to your point, I saw yesterday Dr. Becker from Maple Grove Senior High posted on Facebook that he wanted to continue courageous conversations about race and equity in the school district, but the kids don't have everybody had to turn in their stuff. So once again, there's another barrier there. Somebody else want to go? Have more to add?
I can.
Yeah.
This is easy.
Yeah.
So one of the things I also noticed with my own daughter in her classroom, and it also happened in my own group meetings with my school district, is it's a good thing to focus on parents and students not having reliable internet access, but there are also teachers that live in rural places that don't have reliable internet access. I've had my daughter teacher in the middle of teaching, called network dropped. And so we're sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. And she never came back. And she had to send out an email that, she had a network failure. And I've had colleagues of mine while we're having teachers meeting, that their internet would just go out because they live in places where they don't have reliable internet access. And so I think District 279 has to be thinking about a way, even if the money is not there, of finding a grant or partnering with Ed Minnesota and see how, while we are providing access to the students, we're also making sure that the instructors have sustained reliable access. Because having the students in the classroom and the teacher that's not there does not solve any problem at all.
That's a really good point, that teachers are also missing out on technology access at times, as well as training. Kevin?
And just to add to that, as you're an example, Susie, there's teachers have kids, and so any technology, and when you're talking about having people connecting to an access point or a router or something like that, there's limits to the amount of bandwidth that an individual house has. And so when you have, like in my family, I have myself working from home, my wife working from home, and 3 kids trying to access online learning. That's a drain on the bandwidth in our home. And so suddenly you have connection issues for certain parts of the day when we're all busy. And of course, it's when everybody is using it at the same time that it's all necessary for it to be working. And so if we're not addressing how we can make sure that we have reliable connections for everybody in the house, not just saying we've provided a connection, but it has to be a holistic look. So that's just kind of my 2 cents. We need to make sure that we're looking at the bigger picture in any of these solutions of connection and providing technology.
That's a good point. Abdi points out in the chat here that Mankato allowed students to keep the devices for the summer unless they were graduating. And I honestly thought that was part of the Osseo School District plan at first, but then they started collecting them. Holly, you wanted to talk next?
Yeah, I'll make it brief. I think so. There is that heavy technology piece, but you know, my other concern is that this is a new model, so I don't expect teachers to automatically know how to work this model. But you know, kids have different learning styles. So, you know, my own children show differences. I remember picking up a binder for my daughter and talking to her teacher, and her teacher was saying, yeah, my son basically has fallen off. He needs, this isn't working, or this model isn't necessarily working. So I don't necessarily expect teachers to have it down yet, but I do think that even once we get, which is not easy, if we get everybody access to connectivity and then the technology, I think there's that nuance in terms of how do we reach kids who learn differently, or some teachers need, you know, some kids need teachers in their face more. I know, you know, for my children, I was talking to their teachers almost every week, you know, to the point their teachers were getting annoyed, but it was because my child had suddenly switched to this model and just, it didn't play to their strength. So I think figuring that out is going to be key, because I don't want children to get left behind because of that change to technology. So.
Right, Adua?
You know, Alice, to that point though, from my experience working with Osseo School District, I wouldn't say all of them, at least the few I have the last 4-5 years, I would say, some of these teachers expect the kids to adapt to their style of learning or their style of teaching, rather than the adults adapting to the style of these kids' learning. So these kids who are already left behind now, whether they're able to connect or not able to connect, I'm afraid that they will probably never catch up. Again, from my experience, some of these teachers expect these kids to adapt, actually to compromise who they are to learn, rather than the adults. I don't know how CZ and his colleagues does that, how you craft your teaching plan or whatever to address the individual learning styles of these kids. So I'm afraid that the kids who are already behind will probably never catch up as far as Osseo School District is concerned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CZ and then Mike.
Okay, so I think one of the biggest problems here is I hear you, Odua, and that is an issue in education. But I think where we have to start looking, especially for a person like Tamara, who's going to be running for school board, is how budgeting is done. How much money are you putting into professional development, and what professional development are you funding? Because if you're not, for example, we got forced into this distance teaching. None of us in my school district, we had several links. They sent out an email with several links, YouTube links on how to, and that was our professional development. And that was it, right? So for me, I have an engineering background, so it was easy for me to transition. But for a lot of my colleagues, it was really hard for them to transition. And so you have to start thinking about, well, where is money going to be going? Because if we really believe, like Odua said, that we need teachers to be able to adapt to the various learning styles in their classroom, then we have to put money into those PDs. We can't just make it a 1-hour professional development a year and we're done with it, right? It's the same thing with culturally relevant pedagogy. You don't put 2 hours into that and you check the box and you go. There has to be a sustained issue over the entire school year, right? You have to allow teachers to, at minimum, to do it every 2 weeks, have a professional development in that, if you actually do believe in that. Okay, so that's the biggest piece. The other one is going back to distance learning. I think Osseo School District stands a bigger chance at at setting a standard. If you can come up with a standard, an agreed upon standard where all teachers are held accountable to. So for an example, in my own setting, what I did with my students was I didn't use Zoom because Zoom requires them to put it on their own, to have an alarm and get up and want to do it. I know teenagers, their brains don't work that way. They're not going to come online. It's not going to happen. So I didn't use Zoom. I used Google Hangout to annoy them because I will call and it will ring on their phones and on their computers and wake them up. Right? And then they have to come on and they will watch me for the first 30 minutes. I have my document camera here. So I for the first 30 minutes, I would teach like I teach in the classroom. I would teach and they would ask questions and we record it and we put it on our class, our website for the other kids who still want to watch it later. But then there were some other teachers who were just loading homework and they were expecting the kids to go online and find a way to learn to themselves to do the homework, right? So we have to think about that. The last piece I want to throw out here and then I stop is that in traditional classrooms, you have assistants. As a teacher, I have educational assistants, right? If I have students that have learning disability issues or they have 504s or IEPs, I have those people in the room. I have students who EL students, English language students, I have those assistants in the room. Well, distance learning, we don't have access to those helps anymore. And so students that have a student that have a 504 or have an IEP plan no longer has access to those services, which is a violation of federal laws. But the school districts got caught without having a plan. We can't blame them, but going forward, what can you, as somebody who's running for school board, start to think about as a way of making sure that we have those people in the room, if it's going to be virtual, that they're available virtually also in the room to those students that need those help.
Okay, good point. It was Tara's added in the chat that they did have access to EL services, and they've met. So that's the point, Tara. I think is that some teachers were really doing it all the way, and then other teachers were not, because as CZ pointed out, there's no standard, and of course we couldn't have set a standard. We're walking into the digital wilderness this year. Mike, did you want to say something?
Mostly I was going to kind of forward Hollis's earlier point. With regards to kind of the different learning styles, I was also going to kind of point out that it was hard. It got a little bit hard on parents too, with regards to the different learning styles with my kids, because I had a 9-year-old who was actually doing really good with the distance learning, with direct meetings with the kind of those more direct video meetings with the teachers via Zoom, and as well as the modules where she was kind of set off on her own. She did really well with kind of working on her own with the modules. But then we had my 6-year-old who when he got to his modules, he needed constant attention to stay on task so he could complete them. And I know kind of some of those programs measure kind of the time when you're in the program versus the time you're actually actively working on the task. And so we kind of had to constantly give them attention to stay on task. And I was working remote, and I'm working remotely, so there's only one parent doing that. And for us, you have to add into the mix, we have a 3-year-old, and she's learned how to get past the toddler gates. And she learned how to get past the toddler gates during this period, during this time. So she needs constant attention too. However, my 6-year-old did really well with this when it came down to the structured time that was in front of the teacher with the video, with the Zoom calls. So having that structure and finding ways to kind of have that structure during distance learning would definitely help suit kind of my son's different learning styles. And so finding solutions for the different learning styles, I think is going to be incredibly important if distance learning has to continue into the fall.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up and bringing up that, it's not just do they have the technology, but what's age appropriate. And Tara mentioned something like this in the chat too, that some of the apps work better with different bandwidths. And some of the apps are also probably working better with different kids. So there was a huge lack of consistency with that this year. So to Cece's point, how do we make sure that we're holding the district accountable to what they need to be adding to this problem? And then how do we make sure the funding model works for this? Deb?
I would like to expand on one of Cece's points about, you know, not having standards set for teachers as well, because my daughter had several AP classes, and the teachers were, well, you know, we didn't have anything live teaching. There was a drop-in hour, and then, you know, here, go do all the work. And it's a completely different trying to do that, not just AP classes, but all classes. The same amount of work online as it is when you're actually in a classroom with other students and the teacher. And so if we are switching to online, something maybe to be taken into consideration is when you've got that diminishing attention span, or so to say, with the students, what are we actually expecting them to come out with, and how can we reach our standards without maintaining the rigor of a regular classroom?
No, I think that's a really good point. And from my own experience, you know, at Metro State switching, I really thought of myself as a really independent learner who could do things by myself. But I was really, I really missed the accountability of being in a classroom and seeing other students, to be able to have conversations about assignments, and also like the whole way everything unfolded. The deadlines got really confusing when assignments were due and all of that kind of stuff.
Right. It was, you know, when there's assignments being due on the day you're taking tests. And, you know, I think it's right. It's a standard across the board for how can kids learn in these different situations, these different learning abilities. How much can we be expecting them to learn if it's not going to be the same as it is in a normal classroom?
Yeah. So the two questions I have still. One is, what can we hold the district? What do you think the accountability is for the district for working on this problem? And then also, what are the opportunities for partnerships beyond the school district? Because clearly the school district itself can't solve this problem in and of itself. Kevin?
Well, I can say, I mean, I don't know exactly what we can hold, you know, I'm not going to speak to what we can hold the district accountable to. But I can say that if we're going to be addressing these kinds of needs, we need to have partnership and collaboration between all of the different levels of government agency that has a stake in our future. So we need to make sure that we have, you know, cities making sure that they're planning for the, you know, the city infrastructure, the counties that can be making sure that we have any of the wraparound services, and partnering with schools to get assistive services that the county provides available to students and teachers and parents if they need it. And schools are going to be at that crossroads where they have the most insight of where those needs are. And so I think the county is going to, or should be playing a very big role in kind of making sure that we mitigate some of these issues before they become crisis level. And then the state needs to be making investments to, you know, provide the statewide broadband connection that isn't tied to, you know, your credit rating and whether or not your zip code is profitable for a company to, you know, lay connection groundwork. You know, it's like, I think we need to make sure that everybody is invested in making sure that we are seeing a successful outcome. So.
Yeah, to build on that, what kind of partnerships could be made to help teach technology? Because clearly the school can't do all of that. You know, Asizi, I loved your community conversations together night with the League of Women Voters, going through and showing people how to sign up for the absentee ballot. I forget that at time, you know, like, you know, I keep thinking, well, we'll just send everybody out mnvotes.org, but that's not obvious for everybody to be able to fill out. And so there's, you know, our whole population needs to be able to be shepherded onto this digital environment so that they can have access to the economy as it changes.
Yeah, and I think that's what we take for granted quite too often, right? We forget that not everybody knows how to do everything. One of the things I've always advocated for, and I'm going to throw it out here, is that when new students come to a school district, there should be an orientation video of how to for parents that you make available to parents to watch. Look, I keep saying this over and over. I had a student who got suspended in my classroom, and because his parents felt like education was like where they had come from in Liberia. When you get suspended, it means you're suspended from education. You're not allowed. It's almost like you have a restraining order. You're not allowed around the campus. Like there's a restraining order on your learning. And so that's what their parents felt. And so while teachers were piling up work in the front office for him to come and pick up for his son, he just felt he wasn't allowed on campus. I had to call him and say, hey, you need to come and pick up these papers. He said, well, you suspended my son. I'm not allowed on your campus. I said, that's not how it works. Your son has a right to education. But he didn't know that. He didn't know because nobody had told him that. And had it not been because I saw that and I knew him to call him personally, it was just going to pile up in there. And so how many other parents don't know so many things that they can be advocating for that we don't have a how-to guide at any district? This is not just 279 issue. It's an all education issue. To the larger point about how do we form partnerships, I think Kevin is right. We have to look at everybody from city council to county commissioners and everybody at the Capitol. But I also want to throw in there community organizations and community groups, right? That there has to be a partnership. So for example, what happens to after school going forward? Because after school was created as a way to help students for whom the 45 minutes or 55 minutes of classroom time was not enough to be for whatever gaps they have. And so after school was for that. Now, COVID-19, distance learning, what does after school look like? That's where we step in, right? When we started doing our community tutoring. And I think there's a huge opportunity for District 279 and other school districts to start thinking about that. Because a lot of our students naturally come back to us with a summer slide, with a gap in their learning. Now take and add this COVID-19 into that calculus, they're going to come back way more behind, and the gap is going to widen. And we're going to need these services. But how can District 272 lead that way, right? What does after school look like? And who do you partner with to make sure that you have services like that for students that after the regular classroom, they still have somebody to help them out?
Right. And to your point too, like relieving the burden on parents for having to figure out how to navigate the system. Tara has added here that some of the students had ESPs assigned to them and were able to help in Google Meets, but the parents had to request it. Who remembers to do all of that and knows how to do all of that without any sort of like assistance? You know, I missed things. I'm fairly on top of stuff, but I missed stuff too because there was just so much at once. Winfred, did you want to add anything about city and district partnerships and how that conversation maybe didn't go as well as planned with the Brooklyn Park City Council?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. Clearly, there needs to be a great partnership between all of the various stakeholder groups, at the state level, the county level, and down to the city level, the municipalities. But as Cesar said too as well, I think another critical piece too is the community organizations or big-based organizations. The way our system works, and most of the smaller cities in the state of Minnesota, we don't have jurisdiction over education. So we have we work with them. But that doesn't mean that we don't partner with us, the school districts or other school districts, Robbinsdale or Anoka Hennepin School District. We partner with all of them, but we don't have any sort of direct control over them. But we have a lot of leverage, and we can bring a lot of leverage to the table. And so we I'm also part of the by virtue of being a city council member, I'm also a commissioner, actually the treasurer of our economic development authority. So we have some money that we can chip in. I think you all have seen we partner with Osseo School District in putting that multi-million-dollar dome at Park Center High School. So internet connectivity and trying to close the technology gap within the city, that's something we can definitely partner with Osseo School District and any other school district for that matter. So we welcome that. We definitely welcome that. I think one of the issues is, and someone talked about it about this earlier, is not looking at these apartment complexes. And I think for some of my city council members, even though I disagree, because it was expressly said that the project that was voted down, that was a pilot project, and they were going to try to generate some data from there, analyze some data, and see how best they can scale it up and move it to other parts of the city. Brooklyn Park sometimes is seen as a two-tier city. Is very stratified. So the northern tier of Brooklyn Park is very affluent. And the southern part, so the divided line is 85th Avenue. So the southern part of 85th is where we have a lot of issues, a lot of inequalities and disparities there, high disease burden. I mean, just a whole plethora of issues and challenges there. So I appreciated this group coming and trying to set up this pilot technology program. But other members of the council felt that because it was not going out to the other part of the city, even though the need was not as high in the northern part of the city as opposed to the southern part of the city, they still didn't see that as important. So, I think we also have to look at how we are going to equitably spread and technology and close the technology gap across the city. So it's not just within the apartment complexes, but also within homes, because there are a number of these parents too. They're in homes. I know a vast majority of them, they're heavily concentrated, disproportionately concentrated in these apartment complexes. But to get the city council, and I must say my city council is pretty conservative and fiscally conservative too, as well. So to try to get them to move on certain things, we have to package it, a little differently. But there's no question about it. There's a need for partnership. We do embrace that. We partner with Osseo, Anoka Hennepin, with many other entities, with Dominium and some of the apartment complexes owners. They're run by these big companies. we partner with them too. So we can leverage, we can use our clout and you know, and bring some of these big players to the table. So that you know, there's no question about it. And it's not just about bringing these players to the table, but bringing some money to the table too as well.
Well, thank you very much, Winfred, for joining us and for your comments, and Kevin Anderson and everybody who's been on here. It's a little bit afternoon. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. If you want to hang out a little bit longer, I won't turn the Zoom off. If you need to take off, I understand. Big thanks to Hollis Winston for getting some, kind of getting something going. It's a sort of a pinch hit on this particular issue, and I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to really kind of talk about how big and complicated these issues and sort of poking in where we can come up with some solutions. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy your Saturday. Hopefully no more Zooms today for you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you